They don't leave because they don't like you. They don't stop because they don't feel something. They stop precisely when it's starting to feel real. This is the heartbreaking paradox of the avoidance, almost love. It's not a lack of attraction. It's not boredom. It's not even that they never cared. It's that caring is exactly what terrifies them. When you first meet them, everything feels alive. They show up with charm. They make you laugh. They lean in just enough to make you believe this is safe ground, and you let yourself hope. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time they won't pull away. But then, just as the closeness deepens, something shifts. They retreat. They grow colder. Their calls become shorter. Their messages delayed. It's not an accident. It's not because they forgot. It's not because they're too busy. It's a reflex, a defense, a survival strategy they've carried for years. To the avoidant, love feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. The view is breathtaking. The possibility is beautiful. But the drop feels endless. And in their body, the fear of falling is stronger than the desire to fly. So they step back, not because they don't see the beauty, but because they can't bear what it would mean to fall. You feel it, the silence that wasn't there before, the hesitation in their eyes, the way their affection turns into distance overnight. It's not your imagination. It's the cycle. They reach the threshold, and instead of leaning in, they retreat. This is the moment that confuses partners the most, because up until then, everything felt mutual. The connection felt undeniable. The warmth was real. You weren't making it up. You weren't dreaming. They really did feel something. But to the avoidant, feeling something is exactly the danger. Love doesn't register as safety. In their nervous system, love registers as risk, as exposure, as vulnerability. And vulnerability was never safe in their world. When you've grown up believing that needing someone equals disappointment, closeness stops being a gift. It becomes a threat. So when their heart speeds up, when the bond grows deeper, when the possibility of depending on you starts to feel real, they slam on the brakes. To you, it looks cruel. To them, it feels necessary. Because in their mind, pulling away early is easier than being left later. Disconnecting first feels safer than risking rejection. Think about it. For many avoidants, love never lasted. Comfort was never consistent. Affection always came with conditions. So their body learned. Don't trust what feels good. Don't believe what feels steady. Don't relax into what feels safe. Because safety is temporary, and closeness doesn't last. This is why they master the art of almost love. They come close enough to taste intimacy, to feel the warmth, to experience connection, but not close enough to risk being consumed by it. Almost love is safer than real love. Almost love lets them feel desire without surrender. Almost love keeps their independence intact while letting them pretend they are still in the game. But here's the tragedy. The avoidant wants love too. They long for connection. They crave intimacy. They're not immune to it. They're not above it. They're not cold at the core. They're afraid. Afraid that if they let you all the way in, you will see their rawness, their needs, their dependence, their longing. And in that exposure, they will lose the very armor that has kept them alive. So they live at the edge, half in, half out, enough to feel the sweetness, but never enough to feel the risk. And you, the one on the other side, are left with the ache of being loved halfway. You can sense it. The connection is there. It's alive, but it's stuck. Because every time love moves forward, they move back. Every time intimacy grows stronger, they dilute it with space. Every time you lean in, They lean out. It feels like a dance. One step forward, two steps back. The rhythm of almost love. A love that promises, but never delivers. A love that whispers, but never declares. A love that brushes against you, but never holds on. And here's what makes it even harder. They don't always know they're doing it. For many avoidants, this pullback isn't a calculated move. It's instinct. It's muscle memory. It's survival encoded in their body. They feel the anxiety rising. They feel the closeness suffocating. And before they can think, they withdraw. But from your side, it feels like betrayal. Because how can someone who looked at you with such softness now look at you with indifference? How can someone who held you so close now act like you're a stranger? How can someone who almost loved you choose distance instead? This is why the avoidance almost love hurts so deeply. It's not rejection in the beginning. It's not indifference from day one. It's not coldness from the start. It's warmth. It's connection. It's possibility, followed by withdrawal. And that contrast is what cuts the deepest. Because you don't just lose them, you lose the hope they gave you. You don't just miss the person, you miss the possibility. You don't just grieve the relationship, you grieve the love. That almost was. And that's why the avoidance almost love can linger inside you for years. Because you felt something real. And you were right. It was real. It just wasn't safe. For them, that's where the tragedy begins. The truth of why they always stop. Right before it gets real. Not because they didn't feel love, but because they did. And that love was the very thing they were never taught to trust. When you're with an avoidant, you often feel like you're living inside a story with missing pages. There are chapters that begin beautifully, but never reach an ending. Moments that feel like promises, but never turn into commitments. It is not because you weren't enough. It is because enough was never the point. Avoidants are experts at staying right on the edge of intimacy. They master the space between closeness and distance, close enough to spark your hope, far enough to keep their safety. This is the in-between love, the almost relationship, the emotional half-light. You see it in the way they touch you, gentle, yet guarded. You see it in the way they share with you, open, yet selective. You see it in the way they love you, present, yet absent. It feels like they are holding something back. And you're right, because what they're hiding isn't a lack of love, but the terror of what love requires. Real love requires surrender. It requires dependence. It requires trust. And those are the exact things the avoidant fears most. To understand this, you have to see the history they never speak of, the childhood where comfort was inconsistent, the family where emotions were a burden, the early relationships where closeness turned into pain. This is the soil where avoidance grows, not in coldness, but in survival. Imagine a child who reached for comfort, but was met with rejection. Imagine a child who showed emotion, but was told to toughen up. Imagine a child who needed connection, but learned that needing always ended in disappointment. That child grows up, and though the adult may look confident, may seem independent, may even act like they don't need anyone, inside, they are still carrying that same rule. Don't need, don't depend, don't get too close. So when you love them, you awaken something ancient, because your closeness brings up that childhood fear, not consciously, not logically, but in their body, and their body remembers. Closeness is danger. This is why their timing feels so cruel. Just when you are sure it's safe, they disappear. Just when you are ready to fall in, they step out. Just when the relationship feels alive, they retreat. It feels personal. It feels targeted. It feels like punishment. But in their nervous system, it feels like survival. Almost love is their safe zone. It's the distance where they can feel warmth without losing control. It's the half commitment that gives them sweetness without demanding surrender. It's the place where they can pretend to love without the terror of needing. But here's the irony: their almost love doesn't protect them from pain, it traps them in it. Because when you love halfway, you never feel the fullness of intimacy. When you only touch the edges of connection, you never feel the safety of being held. When you only taste love, you never get nourished by it. So the avoidant ends up lonely in their independence. They live with people at arm's length. They talk without revealing. They touch without surrendering. And deep down, they ache for the very thing they keep running from. This is why almost love becomes their pattern, not just with romance, but with friendships, with family, with life itself. They stay close enough to belong, but never close enough to depend. They stay engaged enough to be seen, but never vulnerable enough to be known. They stay around enough to be wanted, but never committed enough to be trusted. And the partner who loves them feels this contradiction. You feel loved, but not fully. You feel chosen, but not secure. You feel seen, but not deeply known. It leaves you doubting, questioning, wondering if you're imagining things. But you're not. You're feeling the absence that sits inside their presence. And this absence is what makes almost love the most painful love of all. Because you're not grieving a breakup, you're grieving a bond that never had the chance to live fully. You're grieving potential. You're grieving closeness that hovered just beyond reach. It's like standing outside a home, seeing the light glowing warmly in the windows, but never being invited in. You see what could be, but can't touch it. The avoidant doesn't plan this. It's not manipulation. It's not cruelty by choice. It's the only way they know to stay safe. Because in their world, being almost in hurts less than being fully in and abandoned. Being half loved hurts less than being fully loved and betrayed. But this protection is the very thing that keeps them from love at all. Because real intimacy requires risk. Real love requires stepping into uncertainty. And the avoidance, almost love, is an endless waiting room. No entrance, no breakthrough, no arrival. Here's the hardest truth: when you love an avoidant, you will always feel like you are waiting, waiting for the call, waiting for the commitment, waiting for the words they never quite say. And the waiting becomes its own heartbreak, because you are giving real love to someone who only knows how to give almost. And yet, their heart does not stop longing. Deep inside, they want what they run from. They want to feel safe enough to stay. They want to feel loved enough to open. They want to believe that needing someone won't destroy them. But until they face that fear, they will always stop, just before it gets real. This is the tragedy of the avoidance almost love. It is not that they don't want you. It is that wanting you is the very thing that terrifies them. It is not that they don't care. It is that caring reminds them of every moment. Love was not safe before. It is not that they can't love. It is that their nervous system confuses love with danger. And so, they choose the in-between, the almost, the half-presence, the love that never fully arrives. It's not your fault. It's their wound. But when you're on the other side, it feels like rejection, like abandonment, like being loved and unloved all at once. That is the invisible weight of loving an avoidant. And it's why so many partners stay stuck in the cycle, hoping that one day they almost will finally turn into real. If you've ever loved an avoidant, you know the exact moment. Everything shifts. It's subtle. It's quiet. It's almost invisible. One day, Their eyes linger on you. Their laughter feels free. Their presence feels closer than usual. You sense them softening. You feel the walls begin to lower. And just as your heart dares to believe, they pull back. The warmth cools. The closeness shrinks. The rhythm breaks. You're left wondering, what happened? What did I do wrong? The truth is, you didn't do anything wrong. What you felt was real closeness. What they felt was real danger. Because here's the hidden equation. Inside every avoidance nervous system, closeness equals risk. Intimacy equals loss of control. Love equals exposure. The more they care, the more vulnerable they feel. The more vulnerable they feel, the more unsafe their body tells them they are. So when you reach for them, with tenderness, with openness, with sincerity, you're not just offering love. You're activating alarms. They don't even know are there. Alarms that say, if I let this in, I'll be trapped. If I depend, I'll be betrayed. If I stay open, I'll be hurt. This is why they pull back. When things get real, not because the love is weak, but because the love is strong. Not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much. Not because you scared them away, but because closeness itself was the trigger. Think of it this way. Their nervous system is like a smoke alarm. Sensitive, overreactive, always on guard. When you bring love closer, the alarm mistakes warmth for fire. It doesn't check if it's safe. It doesn't pause to reason. It just reacts. And the reaction is distance, withdrawal, silence. This is the paradox of the avoidant. The very thing they want, connection, is the very thing they run from. The very thing that could soothe them, love, is the very thing their body rejects. So they live in a loop, longing, retreating, returning, over and over again. Let's look deeper at the exact triggers that activate this retreat. Trigger 1, your consistency. It sounds backward, doesn't it? Most people crave reliability. Most people feel safe when love shows up steadily. But for the avoidant, consistency feels like pressure because every time you show up, they're reminded of the unspoken expectation to let you in. And letting you in feels like a loss of independence, like a threat to their freedom. So instead of resting in your consistency, they react by pulling away. Trigger 2, your vulnerability. When you open your heart, you're modeling intimacy. You're saying, this is safe. You can trust me. But for the avoidant, your vulnerability stirs a mirror. They see in you what they can't yet give. They feel exposed just by being close to someone so open. So instead of meeting you there, they retreat, not because they don't value your openness, but because it threatens their carefully constructed armor. Trigger number 3, your joy. Yes, your joy. The moments you feel most connected, most certain, most alive in the relationship. These are the very moments that send a shiver through their body. Because joy signals intimacy. Joy signals deepening. Joy signals possibility. And possibility is where their fear lives. So right when you think, this is the breakthrough, they start stepping back. Trigger 4, your dependence. Not unhealthy dependence, not clinginess, but simple, natural reliance. When you call them first, when you need their presence, when you count on them for comfort. To you, it's connection. To them, it's a warning. Because dependence was never safe before. Dependence meant disappointment. Dependence meant abandonment. So the moment they sense you leaning in, their body braces, their distance grows. Trigger 5, their own feelings. Here's the part most people never see. It's not just your love that triggers them, it's their own. Because when they feel love for you, they feel exposed. When they miss you, they feel weak. When they long for you, they feel powerless. So instead of celebrating those feelings, they suppress them, they smother them, they silence them. Distance becomes their way of protecting themselves from their own heart. This is why the avoidant always seems to stop right before it gets real. Not because they don't want more, but because more activates every alarm they've ever carried. But here's the tragic irony. Their distance doesn't calm them. It isolates them. Their silence doesn't protect them. It empties them. Their retreat doesn't erase the love. It just buries it under layers of fear. So while they're pulling away to feel safe, they're also creating the very loneliness they dread. And you, the one who loves them, are left in the aftermath, wondering why love turned cold, blaming yourself for their withdrawal, trying to decode a silence that was never truly about you. Because their retreat isn't about your worth, it's about their fear. This is the moment where many partners get stuck. You start working harder, giving more, chasing their attention, but the harder you try, the more they retreat. Because in their nervous system, your effort feels like pressure. Your pursuit feels like a trap. So the cycle deepens. Your love feels heavier to them. Their distance feels sharper to you, until you're both caught in a painful dance neither of you meant to create. And here's the truth. Most people don't tell you. Avoidants don't mean to hurt you. They're not plotting against you. They're not playing games. They're simply obeying an old survival rule, a rule written long before you, a rule that says closeness is danger, distance is safety, but survival is not the same as living, and protection is not the same as love. So every time they pull back, they are not just protecting themselves from hurt, they are also protecting themselves from the very intimacy that could heal them. This is the heartbreaking truth of the avoidance triggers. The closer love gets, the more dangerous it feels. And so, they stop just before it gets real. When the avoidant pulls away, it looks like rejection. But what if I told you their silence is not the end of the story? Because behind every retreat, behind every cold front, behind every unanswered message, there is something deeper happening, something most people never see. You see, silence is not absence. It is communication. It is language. And for the avoidant, silence says what words cannot. It says, I'm scared. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to let you in without losing myself. But of course, you don't hear it that way. You hear silence as rejection. You feel distance as abandonment. You take the withdrawal personally. Because how could you not? You showed up with openness. You offered closeness. You risked your heart. And in return, you were met with coldness. But here's the paradox. The avoidance silence isn't proof that they don't care. It's proof that they care too much. Because silence is their way of staying safe. When closeness feels unbearable, it's their shield. It's their hiding place. It's their secret survival tool. Imagine their inner world. When they begin to feel close, the warmth of connection rises. Their guard weakens. Their body whispers, this could be love. And then, like clockwork, alarms explode. The old rules surface. Don't trust. Don't need. Don't depend. So instead of letting the moment deepen, they retreat into silence. Not because you did wrong, but because their body is obeying rules they never chose. Here's the part that's hardest to see. Their silence isn't empty. It's full, full of thoughts, full of fear, full of longing. They don't know how to hold. They replay your words. They think about your touch. They feel the ache of missing you. But they stay silent because silence feels safer than speaking, safer than being seen, safer than admitting they care. This is why their silence is not the opposite of love. It is love. twisted by fear. It is love, hidden behind walls. It is love, so overwhelming. They can't handle it out loud. But here's where it gets more complex. Silence doesn't only protect them, it also punishes you. Not intentionally, not out of cruelty, but because when they shut down, you're left alone with your questions. You begin to doubt yourself. You wonder if you push too hard. You replay every detail, searching for the moment you lost them. And in that doubt, you shrink. You silence yourself. You begin to move carefully around them, which means their silence gives them more control. It keeps them safe, while you bend yourself smaller to avoid losing them again. This is how silence becomes power, not because they want to control you, but because fear teaches them to cling to whatever makes them feel secure. And if silence keeps them safe, they'll use it over and over again. But here's the tragic irony. Silence protects them, but it also isolates them. It keeps them safe in the moment, but lonely in the long run. Because no matter how far they retreat, their heart doesn't stop longing. Their body still craves warmth. Their soul still aches for closeness. But silence builds walls so high that even they cannot climb back over. And this is why, in their quietest moments, the avoidant starts to feel the ache of what they've lost, the message they ignored, the touch they pushed away, the love they couldn't let in. Because silence doesn't erase love, it only buries it. And buried love always finds a way to haunt them. So while you sit in confusion, believing they don't care, they are often sitting in silence, feeling the weight of their own distance. Their mind whispers, I miss them, but their fear shouts louder. You'll get hurt if you go back. And so they stay frozen, not moving closer, not letting go, just lingering in the in-between. This is why their almost love hurts the most, because it's not absence, it's presence with limits. It's love that almost arrived, love that almost deepened, love that almost became real. But instead of growing, it got trapped in silence. And here's the thing. Silence is not just their shield. It's also their signal. It's how they say, this is too much for me. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to do this. But because they don't put it into words, you never get the translation. So instead of understanding, you feel abandoned. Instead of seeing fear, you see rejection. Instead of hearing the truth, I'm scared of how much I feel. You hear the lie. I don't feel anything at all. This is the great tragedy of the avoidant silence. It doesn't protect them from loss. It creates it. It doesn't stop their fear. It feeds it. It doesn't end their longing. It intensifies it. So the silence that feels safe today becomes the loneliness they regret tomorrow. And you, standing on the other side, are left holding two truths at once: the truth of your own pain and the truth of their hidden fear. Because both are real, both are valid, both live inside the silence. This is why understanding their silence changes everything. Because when you see silence, not as rejection, but as fear, you stop taking it personally. You stop blaming yourself. You stop chasing their walls. With harder effort, you realize their silence is their survival. And survival has nothing to do with your worth. But here's the hardest part. Even when you understand, the silence still hurts. Because love was made for connection. Love was made for words. Love was made for closeness. And no matter how much you rationalize it, silence always leaves a scar. So what do? With an avoidance silence? You see it for what it is. Not a verdict on your value. Not a rejection of your love, but a reflection of their fear. And you remind yourself, their silence is not proof that you are unworthy. It is proof that they are still learning what it means to feel safe in love. This is why silence, as painful as it is, is also the evidence that their story isn't over. Because silence means they haven't left completely. They haven't cut ties fully. They haven't forgotten you. They are still there, lingering, torn, conflicted. And if silence holds anything, it holds proof that you matter, perhaps more than they can bear to admit. This is the cruel paradox of the avoidance, almost love. It feels like absence, but it's actually presence. Frozen in fear. It feels like rejection, but it's actually longing. Buried under silence. It feels like indifference, but it's actually intensity. They cannot carry in the open. So the next time their silence comes, remember this. It isn't emptiness. It's everything they cannot yet say. It isn't rejection. It's fear wearing armor. It isn't the end of love. It's love stuck in survival mode. The avoidance' greatest tragedy is not that they don't love. It's that they love in fragments, in pieces, in pauses. Love that almost lands, almost deepens, almost stays. To those who experience it, their love feels like a promise that never gets signed, like a song that stops on the last note, like a door that opens, but never lets you step inside. For the avoidant, this pattern is not random. It's survival. Every time closeness builds, they feel a pressure rise inside, a pressure that whispers, don't lose yourself. Don't get trapped. Don't rely on this. So they pull back. They create space. They ration their affection. They keep you waiting for the version of love that feels complete, but never arrives. And here's the truth. This almost love is the only version they learned was safe. Think about what shaped them. Their early world taught them that love was conditional, that needing too much meant rejection, that asking for closeness meant disappointment, that vulnerability came at a cost. So they grew up believing, to survive, you don't take all of love. You take just enough to keep going. You love at the edges, not at the center. This is why they keep stopping short, why they freeze just before it gets real. Because real to them is the moment danger begins. But what happens when almost becomes a life? They start mistaking emotional distance for strength. They start believing that not needing anyone is maturity. They start wearing independence like armor, while quietly aching inside for what they won't let themselves hold. And the people who love them, they feel like they're always chasing a mirage, close enough to see the shimmer, but never able to touch the water. This is where the cost of almost shows up. The avoidant loses too, not just the people they push away, but the deeper life they never let themselves taste. They lose the chance to be fully seen, to be fully held, to feel the relief of letting someone else carry part of the weight. And the saddest part? They don't realize how much they've lost until the person who could have stayed finally walks away. But here's the paradox. Many avoidants circle back, not because they suddenly figured it out, but because distance feels emptier than closeness, because absence reminds them of the very thing they were afraid to admit. They wanted more. They wanted love, not almost love. And so they return, but often too late, or without the tools to truly stay. So how does almost love transform into real love? Not through pressure, not through chasing, not through proving your worth. It happens when the avoidant learns a new language of safety, when they see that intimacy doesn't erase them, but expands them, when they discover that letting someone in doesn't lead to collapse, but to strength. And this takes patience, awareness, gentle, steady presence. It takes a willingness to love someone not just for who they show you, but for the scared, hidden parts they try to hide. If you are loving and avoidant, this is the hardest truth to carry. You cannot complete the love they stop short of giving. You cannot drag them into depth before they are ready. You cannot undo a lifetime of survival rules in one relationship. But you can decide this, whether you will wait in almost, or whether you will choose a love that is whole. And if you are the avoidant, know this. Almost is not your final story. Your heart was never meant to hover at the edge. You were not made to ration connection, to keep love at arm's length, to stop just before the moment it could change you. You can learn to stay. You can learn to breathe through the fear. You can learn that safety is not distance, but presence. And when you do, you'll discover the one thing your survival never allowed you to feel: the beauty of love that is real. Because almost is survival, but real is living. And the moment you step into it, everything changes, not just for you, but for the one who has been waiting to meet you fully. If this message reached you, if it made you feel seen, understood, or reminded you of someone in your life, don't let it stay as almost. Share it. Let it ripple. Because someone out there needs to know that love doesn't have to stop at the edge. It can go all the way in. And when it does, it heals everything.